Thank you, AAFCA members, for participating this morning, this afternoon, depending on what coast you're on. We're going to start out west with Carla, the Curvy Critic.
Hi.
Hey, Carla. Nice
We're
to
gonna
see you here.
we're gonna move a little west. We're gonna actually grab our passports and go international to the brilliant city of Toronto, Canada, where we have Carolyn Hines.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Carolyn.
We're gonna switch it on down to the great state of Philadelphia, or Pennsylvania, sorry, where we have Katya.
That's okay, listen.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at your name and saying something else.
That's
so
okay.
Forgive
Hi.
me.
Hey, how are you?
And then we're going to run on down to the sunny state of Florida, which has finally shut its beaches, or has it, Al?
Yeah, they shut them down.
Well, it's about time. My goodness.
Yeah.
And then, of
They
course,
walk along the beach now. I usually do that.
What city are you in, Al?
Boca Raton.
Oh, wow, it's lovely there. And then we're going to mosey on to the peach city of Atlanta, Georgia, where we have Rhonda Penrice.
Yeah, they opened the beach in Georgia, in Tybee.
And we have our voice of God, whose birthday is today, by the way, Mr. Ed Adams.
Hey, Ed.
Wow, that's a really nice nom de plume I will take for today.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank
So
you.
without further ado, I'm going to let you guys do what you do so well.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you to hold for just 1 sec because my dog just went in the direction of coyotes and I want to open the door and make sure he's okay. So 1 sec.
This is what happens when you do live stuff. I love it.
Yeah.
I know, it makes it all more fun.
It's like coyotes. Didn't see that coming.
Are you going to see the Clark sisters this weekend on Lifetime?
Gil, why's your camera off?
Hey, Miss Tina.
Hey, thank you.
So I'm going to go ahead. No problem. I'll go ahead and get it started. I'm Carla Renata, the Curvy Critic, as Gil said in the beginning. And I absolutely love this book that you wrote, the Little Book of Big Lies.
Yes.
I really, as someone who practices Buddhism, I could really connect with that. And I wanted to find out from you, when you hear when someone hears the word fitness, we oftentimes think about the physical instead of the mental. How do you go about impressing upon artistic people, especially us creatives, on how to embrace both in the process of this thing we call show business?
Right. That's a great question, Carla. And thank you so much for having read the book. The book was written from true passion and the desire to help us all live and be more fully alive. So to answer your question, if in fact we all were to tell ourselves the truth, and that's a phrase that I use quite often because it prompts us into a deeper, more authentic consideration. If we are to tell ourselves the truth, we each have experienced what I call hurts, dramas, traumas, upsets, and disappointments. And, you know, up until now, particularly in our culture, it has been practiced to not sort of acknowledge that as a truth, or to will ourselves beyond it, or just be strong and tough it out. Our history has taught us to do that. The problem with that is that if in fact we take color off of these nervous systems, the truth is that our nervous system is always telling us the truth. And hurts, dramas, traumas, upsets, and disappointments that are not resolved actually are energy that gets stuck inside of us. And that stuck energy, just imagine the power of a train, let's say, moving through and being stuck, but the engine not being turned off. So you've got all of that metal, all of that energy, that force pressing against who you are in any particular moment with no place to go, because that hurt, drama, trauma, upset, or disappointment was never fully given the time it needed to process so that the energy could move through. And so inner fitness, exactly like physical fitness, inner fitness is about being able to be aware and develop the mental, emotional, and spiritual awarenesses and practices that help energy inside of our bodies constantly and consistently process itself. And it can't do that without that being intentional. You cannot go to a gym and stand in the gym and actually have your muscles get, stronger and your body stronger and more erect by just standing in the gym. They're actual physical things that you must do to support your physical strength and resilience. And that is exactly the same case when it comes to inner fitness. There are things we haven't known these things, but I will tell you that these things are actually in, they're in books, they're in ancient philosophies. The answers have been here, but we have not been up until now, because we are in new times. The conversation around mental health, that's a new mainstream experience, and it's just growing and it's going to grow, and that excites me where Black folks are concerned in particular, but it excites me for the world, right? And we just need to be aware that if we, just like the people down in New Orleans, right? If we are not paying attention to the information that is real, then we will live our lives just getting through it, having to circumvent certain areas of ourselves so that we don't have to think or feel about the stuff that's uncomfortable. And that, to me, is not thriving. And I am committed to living my life so fully alive that when I die, that's what you get to put on my tombstone. She lived her life constantly moving into the greater parts of herself with the aim of being fully alive.
You're such a
Wow.
deep sister. I love you for it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
That's really great. Hey, Tina, this is Al McGee with Your Entertainment Ticket here in Boca Raton. I'm from Chicago originally. Aren't you from Evanston, Illinois?
I am, and I have to tell you that most of the time that I say I'm from Chicago, Chicagoans stop me and say, "Now where exactly?" And I say Evanston, and they say, "That ain't Chicago." So,
well, my life partner, my girlfriend, she's from Evanston, and I think she knows your family. But here's a quick question about Violet. What you play in Queen Sugar. Now, when you first approached this character, how did you approach this character when you laid your eyes on the paper that they presented you with to act it out?
Yeah, Al, that's a wonderful question, and I have to tell you, it's one that excites me because I don't know if I were a betting woman.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that anyone knew that Aunt Vi would take on such a magnetic life, that people would, with all of these wonderful, talented, young, and beautiful characters that this show focuses on. I don't think that anyone really thought that Aunt Vi would rise to the top and be one of the breakout characters.
Right.
And the reason that she is because Aunt Vi has, throughout time, represented women that we all know. And yet, these women, particularly women of color, Black women, had never seen themselves fully rendered on the screen. And so the more I don't know that I saw it all in the audition process. I will tell you that when I did the test read with Omar Dorsey, Omar had been hired first.
Right.
And so they had been doing chemistry tests with a number of women against Omar. And when I was in my test with Omar, I knew, when I saw that big old chocolate bald-headed man coming down the hallway, I knew that it would be easy to depict love with this person. He was dark as night, just all the things. And so I'm told that when Ava saw that chemistry test, she knew she had something. Every woman that was part of my rearing in my childhood actually is what I'm leaning into as Violet, because they are and were amazing women. And I now have the honor to depict them, to put them up on a screen so that they can see themselves. Right. And they're loving it.
Oh, thank you very much.
Can we go a little bit back in your career? You were on a show called South Central, a very groundbreaking show. I particularly remember the scene where she was trying to pay her groceries and, they wouldn't take her check, but it turned into a job. Although that show didn't last, it did have an impact on some of the future shows. It was very dialogue driven, the thing I loved about the show. And although she was going through hard times, talk a little bit about that experience and how it did affect future shows. Did you feel positive about it? Did you realize that it had such an impact on other shows?
Yeah, we knew that we were ahead of our time because South Central really was a dramedy long before, the dramedies that are like Atlanta and Insecure. There's an element of South Central in these shows that have people watching today, where there is a lovely blend and balance between the pathos and the humor, right? And we got caught in a regime change over at 20th. There was no question that in terms of critical acclaim, South Central was being noticed, but we weren't there long enough. I think we did 10 episodes.
Right.
We did 10 episodes, and and in the middle of a regime change, that just wasn't enough exposure in order for a larger audience to find us. But if South Central were happening today, it would be right at home in the content and the storytelling that's happening right this moment. So there's a part of that I'm quite proud of, and happy to have been a part of. And in a way, for me, Queen Sugar is sort of a 360 on South Central, because the similarities are taking the lives of Black people and making their navigation of their world relevant to the viewing audience. And Queen Sugar does that so brilliantly. Queen Sugar lets us truly sort of share culture in a way that not only informs, but it also allows people to recognize how much alike we all are, and that the things that matter in our hearts are universal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn Forrester, here's what happened. So I want to kind of like combine this answer that you just gave to Katia and the one you gave for Kirby Credit in the beginning about about seeing ourselves. So one of the things that I really connected with Violet is her struggle with lupus. And that was very important for me to see, because I have a chronic illness in myself. I have MS, and it's up until the introduction of that particular storyline, we haven't really seen any Black female characters, especially more mature women, dealing with significant health issues beyond things like cancer. And it may sound kind of like apathetic to say, but like we always see cancer, but we don't see things with other chronic illnesses like lupus or sickle cell or those kind of conditions. And for you, when you're playing a character like that and she's going through this very significant change emotionally and mentally, what was your preparation for that change in Violet? Because a condition like lupus, because she's gonna have to deal with the physical challenges, the emotional challenges, and the mental challenges that she's gonna have, then dealing with all the drama that comes with having Nova and Charlie in her life.
Right, all the drama that comes with that. So definitely, not only did Queen Sugar bring a number of gifts to my life, one of the things that it brought is my own growing awareness of lupus, to the point that, I am scheduled, though we have had to cancel, to be the Grand Marshal at this year's Lupus Walk in New York. That's really important to me, because this is what I know. I don't, no matter what the name of the disease might be, viewers, every human being is empowered. There's something that happens inside that allows one to both relax and at the same time puff up with a certain amount of pride and presence when they see themselves. And so lupus is an opportunity for Black women to see themselves again on television in ways that haven't been the case up until now. There's the lupus hits the African American community and women in significant numbers, and I don't remember those numbers right this moment. And yet, that's not something that we have known. So again, Ava, who also has lupus, Ava gave voice to all of the people of color who have lived in silence with this disease, not because they were hiding it, but because it wasn't a mainstream disease. And so working with the Lupus Foundation, learning more about that disease. And then I will tell you that the work that I do in inner fitness, it helps with all of that, because it gives me such a deep understanding of the human condition and the pain that comes with not being seen or being challenged in a way that you don't know how to navigate. We all know what that's like, but to be able to put all of those things together in the frame of an acting opportunity, that's called Tina Lifford living her best life.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about this podcast you're doing?
Oh, I would love to talk about the podcast. So Iyanla Van Sant and we actually, our speaker agent, we share a speaker agent, and he is actually more than that. He's a visionary, a producer in his own right. And he came to us knowing the work that we do. Iyanla, of course, you know what she does, and most people don't know that when I'm not in front of the camera, I am passionate about, waving the flag and getting people to reframe their wellness in terms of inner fitness. And he came to us with the idea of the two of us coming together during COVID-19 and talking about love, from a distance. So that's the name of the show. How do we support our viewing community during this time, particularly when people are finding themselves in not just emotional situations, but literal environmental situations, limitations that they aren't prepared for, and that ignite all kinds of feelings. And so for the last 2 weeks, we launched Love from a Distance 2 Sundays ago with Anthony Hamilton. And we just, on this past Sunday, we interviewed Dr. Jessica Clemens, who is a board certified psychiatrist. And this coming Sunday, we'll be speaking with Susie Orman, talking about, you know, how do we love our finances, you know, in these difficult and unprecedented financial times. So the show is on Sundays at 4 p.m. Pacific, that's 7 p.m. Eastern. And the intention of the show is really simple. It is, let's actually drop into a deeper voice that allows us in a community to talk about things that matter in a way that is more heartfelt and substantive.
When did you start to get unstuck, or did you find yourself stuck? Around what age did you start this process?
So in the 5th grade, I had a debilitating experience with stage fright.
Mm.
And I've known from the 2nd grade that the only thing I wanted to do back then was be an actress. And the experience with stage fright, which I go into detail in my book about, but the way in which trauma and stuck energy happens is that it can, the events can oftentimes go underground, and then you never know when something out of nowhere triggers that and recalls that information or experience back to mind, to conscious mind. And so my 5th grade trauma, where I literally was in front of the entire school auditorium and froze so badly that they had to come and pick me up like a little cardboard character and carry me off stage. So at one point that got triggered in my pursuit of my career. And it was really odd. It only happened with auditions, but there was a period of time where literally trying to get through an audition, you know, or get ready for an audition, I would shake uncontrollably. And the amount of time, you know, that experience and the fear that it ignited would take up inside of me, it was like I had to make a commitment to freedom, because I really do believe that each and every one of us is whole, and it's just stuck energy, you know, bad information that distorts our experience of ourselves. And if we can just get better information and learn how to interrupt that pattern, we can truly access more of ourselves and live more fully. So does that answer the question?
Thank you. Thank you. I went to your session in Atlanta, and it was just very refreshing to see, you know, groups of Black women, especially, showing that your life is not over. I think that we've been given this narrative that when you reach a certain age, it's just over, and it's not. There's so much to learn, so much to do, you know, still. So
I'm telling you that I am as passionate. I'm probably even more passionate, and I'm probably, I've got the idea that my entire life is just getting started, you know, and that the possibilities that exist for me are actually greater than the ones that I conceived back when I was conceiving, you know, my career initially. I'm here for the long haul, having fun, playing full out, being me, and knowing that that's exactly how to get there.
Miss Tina, hi, Kathy Woods again. I'm glad that we touched on the subject. You are very fortunate that you get to play, as I like to call it, a young, mature woman, fulfilled character that has a full life. You know, you're not just the old lady on the show. Can you talk a little bit about, do you feel that the industry is getting better at showing women, mature women, having full lives on the screen, especially Black women, you know, not just trauma, but also joy and positivity?
Right. Well, you know, I do think that we're getting better, and there's some very specific reasons as to why. Number one, Aunt Vi would not have existed, and I do believe that Queen Sugar has broken ground in so many ways. We certainly know Ava's initiative around making sure that women, not just Black women, but women directors get their shot, you know, at directing television. And that's why Queen Sugar is really sort of an internship for those first timers, so that they can get that credit onto their resume and then go on. If Ava had not had the kind of love for her own mother, and see her own mother as alive and vibrant and sexy, she would not have been able to write Aunt Vi. And if Oprah had not been in the position, you know, to actually greenlight Queen Sugar, I don't think that we would be where we are. So I do think that Ava and Oprah and Queen Sugar have changed the game. And because that's now out there, I mean, certainly, you know, we see in a show like, what is it with Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin? Something.
Oh, Frankie and Grace.
Frankie and Johnny.
Frankie and Grace.
Grace. Oh, sorry.
Just in terms of the numbers, the baby boomers are, I think we're still the largest population. We might be, you know, running neck and neck with the millennials now, but I think we're the largest population. And you've got baby boomers who now don't see themselves the way we saw our grandmothers, right? These baby boomers are like me. We are here and we plan to be alive and fully alive until we die. And so you have to service that. Not only are we here, we have discretionary time and income. So you must pay attention to us because we support your bottom line. And I think that in and of itself, and then of course, if you can add great storytelling to that, then we really are positioned to see a much richer, more diverse, more authentic, and wide-ranging depiction of, you know, people over 50.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Miss Tina, it's Carla again. I love everything that you've said thus far, and I was just interested to know, in terms of your spirituality and your mindset, what kind of old painful event do you think bullies Aunt Vi?
Bullies Aunt Vi? Oh, that's a fantastic question. So, you know that in season 4, Aunt Vi finally has to deal with the abuse from her first husband, Jimmy. Okay? So here are the things that I knew about, that I had to build about Aunt Vi. I had to build her resentment at the only man prior to Hollywood that she could truly trust was her brother Ernest, and he got snatched away from her. She never had the opportunity to look her abuser in the face, you know, and take her power back from him. So that was stuck, mean, you know, unhappy energy inside of her. Hollywood came in, and his presence made a huge difference. But there was still that need to control, because she was out of control when she was in relationship with Jimmy Dale. And I don't think her response to these kids and to making sure that this family stays together is her passionate ride or die, not on my watch. She was not going to lose another place where she knew herself, where she was safe, and where her contribution could actually cover and blanket people. Because Jimmy Dale robbed her of a lot, and she has been fighting to get a lot of that back. And it just makes sense that her success with her business and her love relationship required that she have to face this other part that had not been addressed, so that she could have more freedom.
Oh, that's
She's a
very good.
badass. I love it.
Hey, Tina, this is Al McGee again. Quick question about acting. How do you prepare yourself, so like when you go to an audition, you don't know the character that well, but how do you prepare yourself? I'm sure there's many components that you prepare yourself for that audition. So, but how do you do it?
Yeah, so a important component for me is having been on stage. You know, one of the gifts of coming from stage is when you put up a stage project, there's always a minimum. You know, usually there's a minimum of like 4 weeks rehearsal, 6 weeks rehearsal, sometimes 8 weeks rehearsal. And that rehearsal allows you to find the character, right? And then the number of times that you do the lines and you rehearse the staging and all of that gives you an opportunity to know the character better. So having had that kind of training and knowing that, you know, the work that you have to do to knit together the story so that you know who the character is when they step on the stage and how the character grows, whether the audience sees it or not, so that every time the character steps on the stage in another scenario, in another set of circumstances,
Right.
there is a full life and experience that is driving that, right?
Yeah.
And so what I do, and I'm assuming that, you know, all actors build a life in some way. I not only take pen to paper so that I intellectually understand my character's, you know, hurts, traumas, upsets, and disappointments, and her journey. I also then find ways to actually, as part of my, well, let's call it rehearsal process for building her, I find ways to embody things that she's experienced. So let's say with Aunt Vi, I had to create and then act out with myself the abuse with Jimmy Dale. Long before I even knew that the writers of Queen Sugar were going to wind up bringing Jimmy Dale back in season 4. I didn't know that, but I had to have those fights. I had to experience the fear. I had to get it into my body because it was a part of my life. And then everything else lives on top of that.
Carolyn, this is my last question. So to go off from that, for when Jimmy Dale comes back, one thing that Viola does that I think was amazing is she set her boundaries with everyone, and especially with Nova. And the thing is, with Nova and Violet, they have a very complicated relationship. I think out of everyone else, she has a very complicated relationship with Nova. And it's interesting. It was interesting to see her, like, you know, she did that thing like you don't even come to my gravesite, if anything else. But I think it was amazing that she did that. And for you talking about inner fitness, sorry, excuse me, it kind of plays into that, because she was like, I need to take care of my mental health and I don't have time or space for you. And there are some people who would begrudge her that. But what she did was very important for her mental and also her physical well-being, because and I think it was touched on a bit in the show. I don't know if they're going to go into it in season 5, where those kind of situations can actually trigger flare-ups for conditions like lupus, and it can actually make you physically ill. Absolutely. So for you, for when you have your own personal philosophy of inner fitness, and you're talking about physical and mental well-being, like when you were portraying those particular scenes and those very intense scenes with Tina, like how did you work through those?
So that's a great tie-in. I'm so glad that you see it, Carolyn, because you know, again, building it and building a real life here. Aunt Vi did not have boundaries when she was with Jimmy Dale. That was one of the things she was robbed of, and not just robbed by him. She was robbed because she didn't give herself boundaries. She was very, very mad with herself for having allowed Jimmy Dale to be in her life as long as he was in her life, and succumbing to the kind of pain and disrespect that he caused. So she was mad at herself. And I do think that the immune system definitely is impacted by the, again, internal experiences, you know, the internal resentments, the hatred against self, the feeling of abuse, and then heaping that onto ourselves over and over and over again. It weakens us. And you know, it does, it just does. And so again, you know, on the inner fitness side is one of the reasons it is so important for us to realize that we are holistic beings, you know, and we don't live in, our experiences don't live in isolation. They live in every cell of our body. And we must be aware of that and do what Aunt Vi began to do, which is to take care of herself. And one of the starting places was boundaries. And yes, you know, she loves Nova, but in that moment, Nova broke something. And Aunt Vi's only way of managing through that was to give distance to that kind of disrespect.
Tina, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you all so much for showing up. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
This is a fantastic way to connect, Gil.
I appreciate that, and looking forward to seeing you soon.
You all be safe, be well, and you know, live life fully.
Thank you, Ms. Tina.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, doll.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.